last year, or was it a couple of years ago now, I was on a retreat and practicing silence, and rented a little place and was just meditating and practicing and listening. And during one of my kind of, in between times, I was listening to a talk by Baba Ram Dass. And it was Baba Ram Dass back before he had his brain aneurysm, back, when he had his full speech faculty. And it was this incredible talk where he was talking about yoga with a capital Y. He wasn't talking about the yoga of the modern yoga craze. They're just now kind of gone away, right? This is back in the 70s. And so when he was talking about yoga, he was more talking about Mahāyoga. He didn't call himself a Mahāyoga teacher, but he was. And he said, he was quoting his guru, Neem Karoli Baba, who he called Maharaji. And he said that Western people, modern people, don't practice yoga because they don't practice the yamas and the niyamas. We're going to talk about what that specifically means. And it hit me like a lightning bolt, and it hit me like a message from Maharaji, from the masters, of something that I really needed to start teaching about. And that was, a couple of years ago, and I did an online course on the yamas and the niyamas, and it was fabulous, and people came, from all over the world into that course. And, we spent 10 weeks on that course because we spent a week on each of the yamas and each of the niyamas. And I realized when I was doing that those aspects of the teachings had kind of been buried and ignored because of the physical aspect of the yoga became more popular and more like easy to sell, and capitalism uplifts anything that can be sold and casts aside anything that gets in the way of that selling. So they had gone away, and then they kind of came back because people, they ran out of things to sell in yoga. And so then, eventually then the yoga teacher trainings required the yoga teachers to learn a little bit of yoga philosophy, and so that little bit of yoga philosophy became these 8 limbs of yoga and became the yamas and niyamas and these kinds of things. And then those things were taught, but they were taught in this way that was very empty. I'm not saying that completely. I'm not saying that about your yoga teacher or your yoga teacher training. Or I know that many of you are yoga teachers, and I'm not saying this about you. I'm saying this in a general way. That they were taught in a way that was kind of empty. In this kind of way that here is this relic, here is this thing that comes from the yoga tradition that once upon a time was said, and that these things, these principles, they apply to your yoga practice. So when you roll out your rubber mat and you are doing downward facing, upward facing dogs and so on and so forth, and keep these other things in mind too. This isn't just a physical practice, this is also a spiritual practice. And here's some ways to make your physical practice more of a spiritual practice. That's what this became in general. And the way that we're trained in Mahāyoga, and this is the way that Baba Ram Dass related to it, was that the physical part of it was just a piece of the Maha part of it. Maha just means great. The overall part of it, in the overall path of enlightenment, the path of awakening, the path of yoga, the physical yoga was a piece of it. All right, we have to work with our embodiment. We have to, work with our energy forces and our prana, our life force, and set that architecture up in such a way that supports our mystical experience. Baba Ram Dass was my teacher a long time before I ever met him. I was first introduced to his teachings when I was just a teenager. I read Be Here Now when I was just new on the spiritual path, brand new on the spiritual path. In fact, you can say in a certain way it was part of me coming onto the spiritual path. I was just 18 years old at the time. And then after that, I listened to his tapes and related to him in different ways. And long story short, after I had already become full-time yogi, after I had found my own guru and my own path and was teaching on my own, we go from 1988, 89, when I read Be Here Now, to 2004. Okay, so fast forward a lot. 2004, 2005, I have this opportunity to meet Baba Ram Dass in person. I actually got to interview him the first time that I met him for a yoga magazine that no longer exists. And one of the questions, in 2004 was, Ram Dass, you helped bring yoga to the West back in the 60s, and now it's blowing up. Because in 2004, that's when the yoga thing was happening. The whole yoga boom was happening in a big way in 2004. And asked him, how do you feel about it? How do you feel about it? You brought this thing and now it's this big thing. And this is after his, if you don't know, he had a brain aneurysm at one point and his speech became very impeded by the aphasia that he had. His mind was still very brilliant, but he didn't have all the words he had once upon a time. And we said, so how do you feel about it? And he started gesturing with his hand, like towards himself. His other arm was paralyzed, but with his free hand, he was gesturing towards himself, like over and over again, like almost like he was stroking his own face as he found the words. And he said, the modern yoga teachers, and he kept doing that gesture, are heaping bad karma onto themselves. Because, he said, the people are coming to them for one thing and they're giving them something else. That the yoga was meant to make them free from their bodies, but now yoga traps people in their bodies more. I'm paraphrasing a little bit. He said that now it's become achievement-based. And then the person from the magazine that was there, representing the magazine, it was like a pretty scathing answer. He went on a little bit more. It was scathing. And this magazine was very much for the modern yoga teachers. So the person from the magazine came up and said, okay, well, what can we do? And he said, kind of in a mocking way back to this person, he said, I don't know what we can do. He said, I took mushrooms and then I met my guru. So I don't know what we can do. And then he turned to me, and the gimmick of this interview was this young teacher interviewing this senior teacher. That was the gimmick of the thing. So he turned to me, and as a teacher, he said, what you can do is, he said, you can, and then a side note, it's really good that you're going to India, he said. It's good that you're in. At that point, I was starting to bring people to India, which we still do to this day. He says, it's good you're going to India. He said, what you can do is you can get people in touch with their incarnation. He said, you can ask them, how's your incarnation? So I do that all the time. In fact, I'll do it right now. I'll ask you, how's your incarnation? Meaning, getting people in touch with this basic thing, this basic teaching of yoga, is that we are a soul in a role. We are a soul in a role. And then I add to it, we are a soul in a role with a God-sized whole. We're a soul in a role with a God-sized whole. Meaning, we are this spiritual being incarnate in a human body, in a human life with human dilemmas. But we are spirit. And that mismatch, you could say, or that kind of incongruence in frequencies, you could say it that way, is the issue. And then that causes this pain in us. This causes a certain suffering in us. And that's what I refer to as the God-sized hole. Meaning, we have this hole in us that can only be filled by spirit. It's not going to be filled by success. It's not going to be filled through relationships. It's not going to be filled through any of these things, except for that connection to spirit. And in yoga is not a religion that relates to an outer God as much as in yoga, we understand that God to be within us. And so then the God-sized hole, that pain of separation, is the pain of separation from our own divine essence. So there's all kinds of definitions of yoga. We're going to talk about one specific one from the scriptures today. But the way that we define it in our Mahāyoga community is that yoga is the process of discovering. There's 3 steps: discovering, then owning, and then expressing our innate human divine essence. Our essence is divine. Our essence is also human. And we discover it first, and then we own it. You know, like we really go through the process of really knowing that that's what we are. And then along the way, we express it more and more until that expression becomes very free and very full. That's our definition of yoga in the Mahāyoga community. And within that, there is a healing. There's a tremendous healing. And so when we talk about the 8 limbs, like the way that we're talking about it in this course that we're doing, we're talking about it from the point of view of it being a path of healing. The 8 limbs are not about yoga. They're not about our yoga practice. The 8 limbs are about the mystical experience. It's a framework for the mystical experience that can be applied to Sufism, it can be applied to Christian mysticism, it can be applied towards just like nature mysticism, and of course it can be applied to the path of Mahāyoga, of course, and that's how we're talking about it. But it's a healing. The 8 limbs are about healing that God-sized hole in a reliable way. Not just in a momentary way. One of my favorite definitions of yoga from the scriptures, it's not the one that you think. It's not Yogas Chitta Vritti Nirodha from Patanjali Yoga Sutra, you yoga nerds. That's not the definition of yoga. That's a definition of yoga for that scripture. I'll geek out about that in a course or in a longer format thing. There are many definitions of yoga in the scriptures, and none of them claim to be the definition. It's defined again and again and again because it's something that is ineffable. It's beyond definition. So many definitions apply to it. This is verse 23 from the 6th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. Tam vivadhuka samyoga viyoga yogas janitam sa nischaya yokta vyo yoga nivinachetasa. Let this, the dissolution of union with pain, be known as yoga. This yoga is to be practiced with determination and an undismayed mind. This is such a cool verse. Let me work with it, because this rendering of it, it's not my definition, it's not my rendering of it. I didn't have time to pull up mine before this class. But it's saying like dukkha samyoga. Dukkha samyoga means like, it's like the union of pain. It's like samyoga. It's like where dukkha is suffering. We're wedded to suffering. That's the basic idea. That's the God-sized hole. And it's a God-sized hole, frankly, that we keep digging all the time. And it's saying like, let yoga be known as, let this yoga of this Gita, of the Mahāyoga, of the spiritual definition of yoga, let it be known as the dissolution of that, the dissolution of that yoga. We're breaking up with our suffering. Right? We're going to stop digging this hole. We're going to start working on filling the God-sized hole with the only thing that fills it. That's the definition of yoga that we're talking about here. And within that, then we have these 8 limbs. It's so cool. And it's a framework. It's a framework. These aren't steps towards Samādhi. Samādhi is the 8th one. Samādhi means like yoga, basically. It means like absorption into the divine. And oftentimes the 8 limbs are talked about like stepping stones towards that. And that's not invalid, but that's not the way that we're approaching it. We're approaching the 8 limbs like these 8 elements of a framework that is necessary. And that works, quite frankly. It's a practical thing. It works. The first 2 limbs are Yama and Niyama. Yama and Niyama are these kind of basic principles. Principles of ethic, principle of you could say like good vibes. It's like having a pure intention, right? And kind of having our shit together psychotherapeutically, you could say. So we don't go into the practice a mess, emotionally, mentally, psychologically. That's what we say, like, yoga is not a substitute for therapy. It's a great complement to therapy. If we need to go to therapy, we need to go to therapy. And so the specific Yama and Niyama, which we'll get into in the course, we don't have time for here. Generally, what we're talking about is we're talking about being authentic. We're talking about being like congruent within our being. We're talking about not being harming. We're not a harming, lying, selfish, stealing being. And the last of the Yama, the last of the Niyama is Ishvara Pranidhana. We will talk about that one specifically. Ishvara Pranidhana means surrender to the divine. And that is, all of the other ones are within that we enter into the practice surrendered. And we enter into the practice with the awareness that we're not the greatest thing. Modern yoga is based in the New Age, which is based in this thing that there's nothing other than me and nothing higher than me. There's nothing more important than me and my happiness, and it's deeply, deeply colonial and oppressionist and privileged. I'll just say that. We teach ashtanga, we teach Mahāyoga from an anti-oppressionist point of view, with the awareness that within human relations, within society, within governments, within this world, there is a lot of oppression. Of the rich oppressing the poor, the white oppressing the non-white, the straight oppressing the non-straight, and so on and so forth. And we try to approach it from this point of view that is not that. And right at the heart of a lot of modern practice is incredible self-absorption. That it does not take into account the other, like the other humans around us. It's non-relational. But also, in this basic way, we don't have a conception of the divine. That's been rooted out. Why? Because it doesn't sell. It's not good for business. So don't talk about God. If you could just focus on the yoga part. They said this to my wonderful partner who was a yoga teacher for many years. Can you just teach the poses and like leave all this other stuff out of it? Because she would bring a harmonium and she would like chant the names of God and talk about the goddess and kundalini and all these things. And the yoga teacher was like, do you think you could just focus on just helping people get in shape? Because that's what they come here for. Just leave this other stuff out. So that's been rooted out of it. And that's one of the essential things. Ishvara Pranidhana. I'm sorry, but like yoga is that. There are other practices, especially nowadays, that are totally atheist. Go do that. Go do Buddhism. It's like it's an atheist philosophy, but also in its modern expressions, there's no God. There's no God talk. It's just like, how do I just maximize my own mind's efficiency kind of thing. Ishvara Pranidhana is there. And then we go in from the yamas and niyamas. Then we go through Āsana, Prānāyāma, Pratyāhāra, Dhāranā, Dhyāna, Samādhi. These are all there too. And Samādhi, yes, reverse engineering, is the deep absorption into the divine. In a lot of classical yoga, including Patanjali, which is not Mahāyoga, by the way, the highest state is called nirvikalpa samadhi. Nirvikalpa samadhi is like you're sitting alone, you're not moving, you're not thinking, you are not there. There's no you. It's just poof. You've just kind of like blown out the candle. Nirvana. You're just completely, there's no you, there's no thought, there's only that eternal principle. That's it. It's called nirvikalpa samadhi. That's considered the highest state in Patanjali, in other classical yoga philosophies. That's not Mahāyoga. There's also Savikalpa Samadhi, which is that absorption is there, but the mind is still active. They consider that to be like a lesser Samadhi. In Mahāyoga, the goal is what is called sahaja Samadhi. Sahaja Samadhi. Sahaja means natural. It means spontaneous. It means unregulated. It means uncontrolled and uncontrollable. So sahaja samadhi is the state of that absorption when we are walking, when we are talking, when we are loving, when we are living life as a human being in a very full way. And people in sahaja samadhi are very human, extra human, extra expressive, extra individualist, wonderfully individualist. Sahaja samadhi is the goal of Mahāyoga. So you don't have to sit still for it. You don't have to close your eyes for it. You don't have to stop doing everything else for it. In fact, let's please do everything else. I mean, maybe let's do less self-hatred. Let's do less mental ruminating. Let's do less unconscious behavior. Let's do less harming, going back to the yamas and niyamas. Let's do less stealing. Let's do less lying. Let's do less, all of those, assuming all of those things. Let's just be human and experience this whole play fully awake. That's sahaja samadhi. So that's there. And then these other limbs are framework around that. So Yama and Niyama are there. They're securing us. There's a great verse in Shiva Sutra. Shiva Sutra is a tantric, non-dualist text. And it says, oh man, now I'm forgetting it. Sattva Siddhi. Oh, I'll have to come back to it. I wasn't planning on bringing in that verse, and then it came in, and I was going to share it with you, and boom, it's gone. It'll come back. But what the verse means, I can't remember the Sanskrit, but what it means is that by the expansion And by the healing of our D, and our D is our intellect, it's our whole mental thing, then sattva siddhi, then our attainment is pure. And this is so important. The way that I render that Shiva Sutra is by having our psychotherapeutic shit together, then our spiritual attainment it doesn't go crazy. Because there's so many instances of people that attain some spiritual attainment or get some spiritual empowerment, and then they go crazy, or then they feel like they're beyond ethics, or they feel like they're beyond morals. And then they say that they have crazy wisdom. And they cause so much harm. So, back into the yamas and niyamas again and again. And then that brings us from yama and niyama to asana. Asana is the thing everyone thinks, it's just like physical postures. And those are called asana, okay? And there's asana practice, which is great. We delineate asana practice from meditation practice. Great. In this, especially in Mahāyoga, we don't see asana as asana practice. Great, do asana practice, it's very important. But asana in the 8 limbs, it means seat, but what it means practically is it means embodiment. It's only part of the embodiment, but it's like it has to happen in our bodies. We have to be in our bodies to be able to do it, especially sahaja samadhi. Sahaja samadhi is not a disembodied state. It's not a disassociative state. It's a very embodied state. If you meet beings that, express sahaja samadhi, they are incredibly embodied. Even if they're very, very old or ailing or ill or in pain, it doesn't matter. So, in Mahāyoga, the asana stage is embodiment, but it's coupled with pranayama. And again, pranayama is a practice. Breath work is very famous now. Great, do breath work. I have pranayama meditations that I share. They're wonderful. It's a very important practice. In the 8 limbs, however, pranayama, we define it as the cultivation of life force. The cultivation, prana means life force, and pranayama means the cultivation of that. And it goes along with asana. Asana, pranayama are the embodiment together. It's like we're in our bodies and our life force, they are ours. Modern people, our life force is scattered all over the place. Capitalism is really good at depleting and dispersing our life force. This device that you're listening to this talk on invariably is also pulling your life force all over the place, all the time. It's counting on it. For capitalism, for other oppressionistic forces of propaganda and just keeping us weak. In the 8 limbs, we're embodied, like that's a physical thing, but it's also this subtle thing of like taking our life force back and paying attention to what we're doing with our life force, what we're doing with our attention, what we're doing with our desire. Our desire is a life force. What we're doing with all of these different energies. And yeah, breath practice is a great thing to do within that, but that's not it. Pranayama is the cultivation of life force, and those two go together. Yama and Niyama go together, Asana and Pranayama go together, and then that brings us to Pratyāhāra. Pratyāhāra is my new favorite of all of the limbs of yoga. As I've been studying it for the course, I looked into the etymology. I love to look at the etymology of these Sanskrit words because none of it is accidental, and we rarely really understand any of them. I mean, I've been studying this stuff for 30 years, more than 30 years, and still, like this one, Pratyāhāra, it's the most basic thing, like Yama and Niyama, Asana, Pranayama. It's the 5th of the 8 limbs. It's one of the most basic things. It's one of the first things that I ever heard, and 30 some years later, I have a completely new understanding of it by looking at it in this light. So I want to share a little bit with you here. Pratyāhāra. Ahara means nourishment, actually. Ahara. It means nourishment. And so prati means a reversal. It means turning around. Literally, it means like turning around. So Pratyāhāra, literally in Sanskrit, what it means like reversing our nourishment. It's reversing, it's usually we define it as the withdrawal of our senses. Right? Again, it comes from this nirvikalpa samadhi thing. It's a stage of nirvikalpa samadhi where after we're embodied and we're in breath, then we withdraw our senses and then we go into meditation, eventually ending in this nirvikalpa samadhi. Okay. In sahaja samadhi, it's not that. Right? In sahaja samadhi, it's the cultivation of the life force is pranayama. Pratyāhāra is changing our nourishment. It's changing our diet. It's changing our energetic sourcing for nourishment, that God-sized hole. Remember that? So with the awareness of our God-sized hole, Pratyāhāra is when we realize, wait a minute, I'm not going to fill this hole with anything else but God. My ahara, my nourishment, it can't just be all out there. I'm not gonna feel better when I finally do what my dad wanted me to do, or when I'm finally successful, or when I have enough money, or when I have the right love, or when I have the right body, or when I have the right social media attention, or when I have the right XY. None of that is it. All of that ahara, all of that nourishment is not it. It's all empty calories. The ahara that I need for sahaja samadhi is I need to turn my attention from getting nourished from all of those things to getting nourished again from God. And in yoga, that God is within. That God is within me, but that God is within all of these other things that are out in life. It's not the surface that I'm desiring. It's the essence. It's not the person. It's not the relationship that I'm desiring. It's the way that relationship it puts me and my soul relating to that soul. And that difficulty in the relationship isn't an interruption of that. The difficulty in that is me learning how to navigate and find the soul. Pratyāhāra is turning us into a soul hunter. It's soul hunting. We turn into like these, like soul predators. This is, we're always on the hunt for soul all the time. Eventually we become like soul plants, they're just plugged in through our roots, just constantly absorbing soul and soul from the sun through our photosynthesis and, But in the beginning, when we're first learning it, we become hunters and we become searching for the subtle all the time. Pratyāhāra. And then those go together. Pratyāhāra and Dhāranā. Dhāranā is the next one. Dhāranā is like the first formal stage of meditation, where, again, in nirvikalpa, I have to keep comparing and contrasting. I'm sorry if it's feeling like teacherly. But nirvikalpa samadhi, in Pratyāhāra, we close our eyes, we sit still, we withdraw our senses, and then we do Dhāranā. We do some meditation technique. That's what Dhāranā means, even in Mahāyoga. Every meditation technique is a different Dhāranā, as a noun. As a verb, Dhāranā is that directly turning towards source. It's directly moving towards it. It's directly in meditation. We're going for it. We're turning in and we're directly moving towards it. In waking meditation and living meditation and sahaja meditation, it's when we're Pratyāhāra, we open to it, right? We open to getting our nourishment from outside. In Dhāranā, we just actively do it. We're actively pressing ourselves towards the divine, in a person, in a moment, in ourselves, in the breath, in the mantra, in the whatever the Dhāranā is that we're practicing, okay? But that's the noun. The verb is the pressing towards it. Dhāranā. Dhyāna, so Pratyāhāra and Dhāranā go together. Samādhi goes together with Dhyāna. Dhyāna means meditation. It is the Sanskrit word for meditation. Dhyan Yoga is the yoga of meditation. In nirvikalpa thing, it's like Dharana, we start to focus. Dhyana, we become very focused. And then Samadhi, we merge. I define Dhyana as communion. Communion. It's still me and the beloved. But I'm still there. And the beloved is still there. And it's fucking wonderful. You know? It's like, it's reliable communion. I'm there. The beloved is there. And we're good. We're entwined. This is yabyam. The image that we have from Buddhist Tantra, from the Indian Tantra, of the male and the female entwined around each other. Or Ardhaneshwara, the Shiva and Shakti in one being. But they're still distinct. Yabyam, they're totally entwined. They're totally interpenetrated with each other. But they're still two that are entwined. That's dhyana. Samadhi then is when the difference dissolves. There's no more me, there's no more beloved, it's just that. The beloved is me and I'm the beloved. That's samadhi in that sense. And so you can see how on the path, on the sahaja path, on the Mahāyoga path, this is what we're going towards. We're going to the farmer's market, and all the fruits and flowers and vegetables are there, and also the people are there, and some of the people we like, and some of the people we don't. Some of the people we're avoiding, some of the people we're trying to attract. You know, the money in our pocket that we're spending, and the negotiating, and the smells, and the sample of the sugar snap peas, or whatever. All of that is there, and all of that is the manifestation of the divine. And we're just completely in that merging. It's all merged. It's all the divine. Every aspect of it. That's the sahaja samadhi. And within that, we're going to come out into dhyana. We're going to come out into just, no, this is just all good. And then we're going to see that person that, whoa, let me avoid. And then we're like, wait a second. That person, that asshole, from down the block, they're here in the farmer's market. Dhāranā. They're God too. Let me see God in them. Let me see God. Let me see soul in them. Let me see God in them. Let me let me pull back my ahara. I'm not trying to get fed by them. It doesn't matter if they're mean to me. God is great to me. I'm like, oh yeah. Let me Prānāyāma here. Let me pull back my life force. I got all my life force caught up in this resentment towards this person. Let me just take that back. Now here we are. Now I'm embodied. Let me do asana. Like, yes, I'm here. And look, it doesn't align with my principles to be cruel to this person just because they're a cruel person. I am a practitioner of ahimsa. I don't want to harm this person, even with my vibes. I don't even want to bad vibe this person. But I have to practice satya. Satya is one of the Yama. It means authenticity. And the truth is, I don't like this person, and I don't want to talk to them. So I'm going to have a boundary. I'm not going to go up and be fake with them, but nor am I going to bad vibe them. Om Namah Shivaya. Om Namah Shivaya. I'm going to give them mantra. I'm going to give them Tonglen. I'm going to give them nothing but good energy and just walk away from them. And here I go. Pratyāhāra, Dhāranā, Dhyāna, God in the form of this asshole from down the street. Ooh, it's so yummy. And the samadhi is back. Oh, this is so fun. Let's do a little practice, guys, and feel free to have questions and put them, and I will address them. In the meantime, let's take a moment and close our eyes. I love talking about this stuff, and it just gets me so high to do it. This is an incredible ahara for me. So we close our eyes, and we just tune in with like love in our heart and self-love. If we just practice self-love, all of the yamas and niyamas are covered, pretty much. And especially like an absence of self-hatred. Remember the Gita, it says, let this, the union with suffering, the severance of that is yoga. So we're just doing our best. We love ourselves, we're here. We're being kind to ourselves, we're not pushing ourselves. Yama and Niyama, covered. They're covered. Āsana is being here. Āsana is being here. You feel your body right down to your butt on your cushion, the floor beneath you, the space surrounding you, the clothes touching your skin and wrapping you. And then you breathe not as a pranayama, but you breathe as asana, just feeling your breath. Just feeling the air, just feeling your ribs expand. This isn't pranayama. This is asana. This is just feeling your body. Put your hands on your body, guys. You could do that in meditation. You could touch yourself. It's crazy that people don't. It's like neurodivergent people, sometimes they feel so disembodied that they have to flap their hands and stimulate themselves so that they can feel where their body is. And so many of us are on that spectrum somewhere where it really helps the meditation to put your hands on your body, especially if there's any areas that feel numb or closed off. And God, please don't sit on your legs if they're falling asleep and knees are in pain. This isn't martial arts, guys. You're not trying to get tougher here. Massage them, change your position, give yourself a better cushion, sit in a chair. Come on, this isn't that anymore. We're beyond that. This isn't kung fu. Come on. Love your body, love those legs, love your butt that you're sitting on. It's all good. All of this flesh, all of these bones. Don't restrict your blood flow. Come on. That's why we wear robes and loose clothes and meditate naked and all this kind of stuff. We're like letting the blood just flow where it wants to flow. Now we do pranayama. Now we call in our life force. Feel the life force moving in the body, but also feel how it might be exported. It might be colonized. It might be abducted. It might be hijacked. You know how it is when your life force gets hijacked? Take it back. Use your breath. Yeah, use your breath. It's a great device. Use your breath, pull it back in. Come into Pratyāhāra. Come into sourcing your nourishment from something different from within. That God-sized hole is only going to be filled with the subtle, mystical, magical energy of the beloved. So just make that inner turn. Even if you're still sourcing it from what feels like it's outside of you. You know what I'm saying? It doesn't have to, You don't have to it doesn't work for everyone to go in to the middle of your body. That just might feel like it's like your heart or your liver or something. Sometimes it really works for people to conceptualize a divine that is surrounding us, or even imagining the goddess sitting before you, or the guru, there in your space. So many things. Now we're getting into Dhāranā, though. Right? This conversation, that which helps you with your Pratyāhāra, is the Dhāranā. Each of the 8 limbs fortifies the next one. It also supports the previous one. It helps you move into the next one, but it nourishes the previous one. So the Dhāranā, whatever that is for you, however you conceive of the divine now, is it outside of you? Is it inside of you? Is it both? Is it a goddess? Is it a guru? Is it an ocean of milk? That's one of the classical ones. Is it a fire? Turn towards it actively. This is Dhāranā. Actively. Dhāranā takes us into Dhyāna. Can you feel the beloved? Can you entwine with the beloved? Can you commune with that? Whatever that form is. You're in the fire now. You're in the milky ocean. You're no longer just sitting before the goddess, but you are embracing the goddess. You're no longer sitting before the guru. Your head is on the guru's feet. The transmission is flowing back and forth. And then, can you throw yourself into it? Can you throw yourself into that ocean? Can you throw yourself into that fire where the fire consumes you? This is the Samādhi, where the disciple and the guru, there's no longer a distinction. The devotee and the goddess, there's no longer a distinction. The Shiva and Shakti, you're no longer half and half. That's the Samādhi. Just play with it. Just imagine Samādhi. Imagine it. And if you're just in Samādhi, then great. Close your computer and enjoy your life. If you want to, imagine sahaja Samādhi. Imagine it. Imagine some typical moment in your life, maybe not the hardest one, but a typical moment in your life. And you're there embodying all of these limbs. Yama, Niyama, Āsana, Prānāyāma, Pratyāhāra, Dhāranā, Dhyāna. And here you are, living your life, moving in your body just as your body is. But you are one with that. And everything that you touch is touched by that. And you talk, and you walk, and you move, and you buy, and you kiss. But there's no separation, actually. It's just oneness. Sahaja Samādhi. And just know that Samadhi is always there. It's not something that you attain. Samadhi, we are already one. Any extent that we experience separation is just a mirage. In Mahāyoga, we don't think of it as an attainment as much as we think of it as a realization of something that's already true. It's just covered over a little bit. That's a good completion moment for you to breathe in nice and deep and let your eyes come open once again.